This slide presentation give an overview because these slides are self-explanatory and I don't want to waste your time. You can read, so I won't go through each of these. This overview really starts with some objectives, and that's to describe anthropology and make its connection among four fields, to compare anthropology to the sciences and humanities, and to identify the characteristics of anthropological field methods, and actually to explain the usefulness of anthropology in light of globalization. The anthropology is really a study of people in all times and places. The focus is on the interconnection and interdependency of all aspects of human experience and in all places, in the present and into the deep past. So anthropology goes well before written history. And you can see here in this slide, we're talking about the holistic perspective. This is probably the most important aspect of anthropology, and the idea that various parts of human culture and biology must be viewed in the broadest possible context, okay, and in order to understand their interconnection and interdependence. And you can see here about the problems that people fall into relative to ethnocentrism. In terms of culture bound, what we're really talking about here is that there are theories, and these theories really are assumptions about the values of one's own culture, you could see. And this is always a problem in anthropology. Even if you've been studying it forever, you really have a hard time getting out of your own culture. So here is a chart showing you some of the various dimensions of anthropology. You could see that in the center is theoretical components, which involve all aspects of every dimension, but we are going to study the circle, if you will, that is of physical anthropology, archaeology, linguistic anthropology, and cultural anthropology. That will be our main focus in the course. Again, most people know anthropology from the cultural standpoint, but that is not the only dimension. More specifically, if you ask the person in the street what they know most about anthropology, they would talk about the physical parts of it. That's what shows up in the newspapers, things like a new fossil find somewhere around the world. You can see here components of cultural anthropology, ethnography, which is the bread and butter of the discipline, and that's going into the field. You cannot write an ethnography from an armchair, and actually describing and making some kind of hypothesis and theoretical statement about what you see. And again, you can see the idea is the notion of participation. You must go into the field. Anthropology gets into the idea of language and how it has grown in its format. Archaeology, as you are all well familiar with, has a couple of dimensions, and we will be talking about those. And archaeology really is the foundation for physical anthropology, because you can't find anything in the sand or in the mud wherever you're digging unless you have some methodology. And physical anthropology is really known as biological anthropology, and it's really looking at how people connect through their historical and physical remains. Paleoanthropology, this will be a big section of this course where we'll be looking at the human line of, or the human lineage from about 7 million years ago. A subset is primatology. Now, primates at about maybe 8 million, 9 million, they went off on their own. So this idea that we're attached to the apes in some sort of unique way, yes, we share some common traits. However, 8, 9 million years ago, they went their own way. They had their own evolutionary path, and then we went our own way. This whole idea that there's a missing link, there might be a shared common ancestor, but that again is at that period of about 8 million years ago. Anthropology is very interested in some aspects of biological adaptation to cultural conditions. And forensics is a very subspecialty related to the remains. And of course, this is the foundation of popular shows of past, CSI, etc. Okay, nothing, by the way, in those shows are accurate. And again, theory is the underpinning. There is no anthropology about theory. One of the questions in a doctoral program you would be asked is, what is your theory of culture? So you have to come up with some attachment, pick one, and stay with it. Field methods is really very much living in the community, among the people, asking them about their way of life, basically acting the fool, asking questions that they look at you like, what is wrong with you? How can you not understand that? And this is the way to get to what is called behind the veil. What is happening? What is the meaning of what people experience? Now, one of the things that's most critical in anthropology is the comparative method. Ideally, this is very much the very key, and that is looking at broad comparisons, both present and past, among cultural groups, to really try to understand what is going on and what are some general patterns that might be emerging. For example, one thing I could tell you linguistically, or non-verbally speaking, is that the smile is a universal language. So if you know nothing about the culture you're in, and just keep smiling, people will know you to be friendly. Anthropology is very much involved in ethical dispute because they are in environments where there's sometimes great political upheaval, and making a record of what someone says could come back to that individual as a political treason. And there have been cases where anthropologists have taken photographs of people, and those photos wound up in the hands of certain dictatorships, and those people had a very hard time of it. So anthropologists are very aware of their obligations to the safety of people. And again, we have to look at anthropology in terms of also the movement of people, money, the people of the transformation and movement of information, and as you well know here, the movement of disease. So you could see that globalization has given us all of this, but it gives us a whole new set of patterns to evaluate. So anthropology, 4 fields, comparative science. It is a science in so much as it follows the principles of formal science. However, its methodology is basically exploratory research as opposed to black box research. So most anthropologists have a tentative hypothesis, go into the field, and then shape up their hypothesis, come back to their culture, write up their findings, go back to the field, and then compare what they have conceptualized to what they see again in a second snapshot. So in many respects, the theoretical frameworks are part of humanities in so much as anthropology will draw heavily on literary theory and other kinds of theoretical frameworks to help understand culture as text. So it gets very involved. But as you get into subsections of it, they use very different methodologies. But from the cultural anthropological standpoint, most people think that the ethnographic approach is hardly scientific, but it is. But it just takes a different methodology. And that is the conclusion. So I hope that this gives you a little bit of an overview. And again, I'm giving you these presentations simply to give you a sense of the material. But I have made the slides in each one of these class meetings very detailed so that you can get the essence of what is in this course by reading. Unless you want to hear a little bit more editorial, then you could tune into my what do you say, commentary. However, it's not necessary, so you make your own choice. Thank you. I'll see you on the next one.